Monday was quite the day in terms of capital markets for gold miners. The price of gold continued to hit new all-time highs, now breaching the $3,800 an ounce level, while at the same time we saw major management shakeups at two of the world's largest gold producers. While a leadership shakeup at one major is uncommon, shakeups at two, announced within hours of each other, seems to be more than coincidental, especially in a raging gold market that seems to still be just getting started. So what's going on? Let's dive in. The story here begins on early Monday morning, when at 7 a.m., Barrick Mining announced a leadership transition. While he was granted the face-saving stepping down commentary, the fact remains that it appears Mark Bristow was fired by Barrick's board of directors, although some suggest it is health-related, with Bristow leaving his role as president and CEO effective immediately. An hour later, we saw Newmont announce the retirement of CEO Tom Palmer. Palmer's departure, however, is not quite as hasty, with Palmer to remain in the role of CEO and director until December 31st, after which he will officially remain with the company as a strategic advisor until March 31st of next year. Curiously, a short while later, Japan Gold then announced that their 5-year partnership with Barrick in Japan, referred to as the Barrick Alliance, had concluded after the latter put $23 million into the ground, signaling more than anything that Barrick seems to want out of the exploration game, which was more than an interesting coincidence. So what's going on? All right, so Bristow is out, effective as of Monday. Taking on Bristow's role on an interim basis is that of Mark Hill, who currently heads Barrick's LATAM and Asia-Pacific regions. Hill has been appointed as Group COO alongside taking on the titles of President and CEO on that interim basis. While Hill has 3 decades of experience as a mining executive, nearly 2 of which was spent at Barrick. One key item that the company chose to highlight here is that he was integral in the decision to undertake exploration at 4 Mile, which is one of Barrick's big up-and-coming projects. We just saw a study of sorts released on the economics of this project in recent weeks, which you can find here. Notably, 4 Mile appeared to be the continuation of mineralization from the Gold Rush deposit, which borders the Barrick property as part of Nevada Gold Mines, which is a massive joint venture between Barrick and Newmont. Whether 4 Mile was highlighted as an achievement for Hill in homage to Barrick's prior history of focusing on exploration or as a subtle reference to Newmont remains to be seen. But make no mistake of it, Newmont undoubtedly wants that massive deposit and its economics vended into Nevada Gold Mines, given the fact that the economics are double that of Gold Rush. An executive search, meanwhile, has just begun to find a permanent replacement for the role of president and CEO, demonstrating that the departure was unplanned. Once known for taking grassroots exploration all the way through to production, Barrick has seemingly changed their profile. In recent years, they have quietly transitioned to focusing predominantly on Tier 1 and Tier 2 assets, with less of a focus on the exploration portion of the development curve. This again can be demonstrated by their departure from Japan. After having spent $23 million assembling a database of geophysical and geochemical data that is target-rich for drilling. Japan isn't the only jurisdiction that Barrick is leaving either, as evidenced by Barrick's sale of their 50% interest of the Donlin Gold Project in Alaska for $1 billion this past April, and the sale of their non-core assets in Chile shortly thereafter. But it's not just exploration they've been moving away from. They've also recently announced the $1.1 billion sale of Hemlo to a currently private group, suggesting the company is taking a Newmont-esque approach to the market. Whether or not they're saying it out loud, they only want Tier 1 assets. Except unlike Newmont, Barrick, with the exception of 4 Mile and Nevada Gold Mines, seems to be increasingly focused on high-risk regions of the world. For example, their Lulu Gunkodo complex in Mali, which was recently taken over by the government after execs were imprisoned, or the Kibali in the DRC, or the Reko Diq project in the geopolitically unstable Pakistan. And then there's the Newmont side of things, which sees Palmer retiring after bringing together Newmont and Newcrest and selling off anything that isn't a Tier 1 asset. We cover those sales excessively here on the channel, but for those that haven't seen any of it, it included the divestment of Porcupine, Ichem, Musselwhite, CC&V, and a slew of other assets that didn't meet the Tier 1 mark. Collectively, it raised $4.3 billion in gross proceeds for the company, which is a figure that doesn't include the post-monetization effort of all the shares they received in those transactions, which resulted in more proceeds than expected. In other words, Palmer seems to have cleaned up the asset base to establish a vehicle with only the best of the best assets globally, and then walked away from it all. Taking on Palmer's role as of January 1st will be that of Natasha Filion, who this past May was promoted from the role of Executive VP to President and COO of Newmont after joining the company in 2023. Previously serving as the CEO of Anglo American Platinum prior to Newmont, she'll now be reprising that title for the world's largest gold miner. In addition to the role of CEO, Filion will also step onto the board of Newmont, taking Palmer's position there as well. So where does this put us? Well, we've got Newmont, the world's preeminent gold producer, with a bunch of Tier 1 assets in Tier 1 jurisdictions, but not a lot of up-and-coming projects. And we got Barrick Mining, who, despite their recent name change, is still a stalwart in global gold production and has a number of up-and-coming development assets that will materially grow both copper and gold production, who has curiously quietly transitioned to focusing on a Tier 1 portfolio while vacating exploration plays. And between the two of them, they have a massive joint venture in Nevada Gold Mines, which has an established process that will, in the future, see one asset from Barrick and two assets from Newmont vended in, requiring either big capital spends from the opposing parties to maintain pro rata ownership or risk ownership dilution in the JV. And neither party wants that. And now, coincidentally, both parties have announced leadership changes on the same day. Curious, isn't it? All right, so let's wrap things up. Obviously, we don't have any form of insider knowledge here. All we're doing is pointing out the patterns. Barrick has transitioned its portfolio in recent years and has taken their foot off the gas entirely when it comes to exploration, which isn't something they've historically done. A lot of the strategy here appears to be derived from Newmont's very public operating thesis. But that's also the trend of majors these days. They aren't exactly focused on the grassroots type stuff anymore, and rather would wait to gobble an asset up once it's been proven out a bit, similar to Kinross in their strategy of acquiring Great Bear. That being said, a tie-up here would make some sense. Neither party wants to shell out cash for the oncoming vending of assets into Nevada gold mines. And in this environment, neither party wants to be seen giving up interest in such a major gold asset. And given Newmont's focus on Tier 1 jurisdictions and Barrick's focus of, well, everywhere else, there's certainly some diversification to be had by bringing these two parties together. And now with the egos out of the room from CEOs that have both served their respective companies since 2019, well, it's the perfect time for these two names to come together, especially as gold continues to smash all-time highs and we see a rotation into commodities from investors. But that's just the rambling thoughts from someone predominantly focused on small caps. And we aren't the only ones to think of it either. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, if you have stories you want us to cover, as always, please let us know in the comment section. All right, everybody, thanks for watching.